Good morning. Welcome to the show. I'm Anli, an associate professor of modern East Asian history at UT Dallas. And today I'm speaking with Dr. Bethany Wilinski, an associate professor in the Department of Teacher Education at Michigan State University. Bethany, welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Yeah, I'd love to introduce myself. So my name is Bethany Wilinski. Like An said, I'm an associate professor at Michigan State University. And just over a year ago, I started a sabbatical coaching business. So that has nothing to do with my research. My research is in early childhood education policy. But as I'm sure we'll talk more about in the interview, I started my sabbatical coaching business while I was on my own sabbatical because I thought that there was a lack of information and a lack of direction when it came to planning a sabbatical that really is purpose driven and helps people kind of re-enter their career afterwards, feeling rejuvenated and ready for what's next.
Fantastic. So, in this season, and the theme is to provide some perspective for the listeners to reimagine what a tenure professor can actually do. How do we transfer scholarly skills in other fields and make bigger impacts? So, also for some of the graduate students listening to think about the alternative to an academic career. So, several months ago, I started to listen to a fantastic podcast created by Bethany. It's called Sabbatical 101. So for scholars, ideas are the currency of success. So I'm very amazed how Bethany created these ideas about being a sabbatical coach and created these fantastic resources for scholars to think about how to plan a sabbatical and just how to conceptualize it in a broader context. So Bethany already touched on it a little bit, but I'm just very curious as an idea. And how did you exactly come up with this idea to try to do something about sabbatical at the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when I got my tenure track job right out of grad school, honestly, the thing that I was most excited about, obviously having a job, but then also my sabbatical. I do research in Tanzania, so you know, doing my work requires long travel and spending hopefully concentrated amounts of time in a different place. And so I really saw sabbatical as this time when I would get to step away from my regular routines and engage in, hopefully a semester or a year that I could spend in Tanzania and really be close to colleagues there and work on an interesting project in a way that you just can't when you're doing all of your normal faculty responsibilities. So I always had this kind of vision of sabbatical. And then I was on the tenure track. It took me longer than normal because I had, kids and stuff. And so by the time I got tenure, I was still excited about my sabbatical, but I was also just exhausted. I was so burned out. And so but I still had this idea of sabbatical in my mind that I would go to Tanzania. And so I kind of just started on autopilot. I worked on a Fulbright application, which, was really exciting. I proposed a really cool project in Tanzania. But then at some point, I often say I clicked submit on the application. I don't know if it was that dramatic, but almost as soon as I submitted the application, I was like, I don't know that the sabbatical in Tanzania is what I want right now. I love my work in Tanzania, but I'm so exhausted. So the idea of the sabbatical coaching business really came out of my own experience of having planned this sabbatical on autopilot that was really like, okay, this is the next logical thing for my career. And I think that's what most of us do. We think about like, what are the projects we want to work on? How can we use sabbatical to kind of like get everything done that we can't get done in a regular semester? And I just started to realize that that wasn't how I wanted to approach it. Part of it was I heard my colleague's sabbatical presentation. He had just spent a year in Florence, Italy, and I heard about his sabbatical and I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. Like, I kind of want to have a sabbatical in Europe where I'm like going to the market every day and, walking down these cobblestone streets. So basically, I started asking myself different questions about a sabbatical, like, what if my sabbatical wasn't just about the next logical thing in my career? What if it was about helping myself overcome burnout or get the rest that I needed? And so, what I think I realized through that process, and kind of the spoiler alert, is that I ended up not going to Tanzania for my sabbatical, and we spent a semester in Bordeaux, France, and then I had a year-long sabbatical, and the rest of my sabbatical was at home in Michigan. But I think what I realized is that there's a need when you're planning a sabbatical to kind of step back and assess where you are in your career and like what you really need on kind of a deep and personal level and a professional level. But I like to start with the personal. And I didn't see, I mean, there are great articles in like the Chronicle and Inside Higher Ed about this, but I went down Google rabbit holes and I just didn't find like all the information in one place. So I really set out to curate resources and ultimately become a resource that could help people take an intentional approach to sabbatical planning.
So it sounds like this is a one-stop resources collection that you are trying to help people to think about sabbatical, not in a conventional way and maybe more thoughtful about it. So just to make it clear, do you think you are the first and the only resources in the market?
I mean, I would hesitate to say that. It's kind of like I always tell my students never to say that their research is filling a gap because you don't know. Someone might have published a paper about it that you just haven't found yet. So I think there definitely are academic coaches who talk about sabbaticals, and there are coaches outside of academia, because I think sabbaticals, even in industry, are becoming more common. I do think that I might be one of the few people, I would say, who are really uniquely focused on sabbatical planning. Like when I started my business, someone told me, you're kind of a niche within a niche because you're talking about sabbatical planning, but only in the context of academia. And I think that's actually important because academic sabbaticals are very unique. I've learned a little bit about sabbaticals in other industries, and I think often those are more like vacations and career or a career break. For academics, we have this break, but we're also expected to be productive. So that makes the planning process a little bit more complicated because you're sometimes balancing competing interests, kind of your own needs, and then the things you think you should or are required to do by your university to prove that you used your sabbatical well.
So let's talk a little bit about how to balance the conventional idea about sabbatical in academia for being productive. You're expected to get your work done. This is the plan that you submit to the school, but you also need the time, right, to reset and restore yourself. So what is your unique approach to this?
Yeah, so I think the perspective that I bring is that we start when I work with clients. And if you listen to my podcast or read my blog posts, I think I talk about this maybe too much, that we start with your sabbatical purpose and priorities. And those are really grounded in doing some reflective thinking that's really not actually about your career related goals, your professional goals. We all have papers we need to write. We all have grants we need to submit. You could come up with a list a mile long, a to-do list for your sabbatical. I think, unfortunately, when you start in that place with what are all the things that I need to check off my list, a couple things happen. First, if you really do need to rest and reset, you don't stop and take a break because you have this long list and you feel pressured to do it. Second, we often overestimate what we can get done in any given amount of time. So you see the sabbatical stretching out before you and think, oh, I have all the time in the world to do all of this work. And then as the months go by and you're not accomplishing it, you feel stressed. And then at the end, you regret how you spent the time if you didn't meet all of your objectives. So we we don't start by talking about those professional goals. We start by exploring possibilities about what you're, just taking a step back and saying, what even could a sabbatical be? Most of us have sort of a schema in our minds. Like I had, oh, my sabbatical is in Tanzania. I hadn't even thought that I could go somewhere for sabbatical that had nothing to do with my research and just use that as like a venue for doing my data analysis and writing, which doesn't require me to be in a specific place. So we take a step back and think about what are the different possibilities. And I encourage people to think really broadly. And even if it's not realistic, and then we start to think about like, where are you now and where do you want to be by the end of your sabbatical and what do you need in order to get there? And so that's your purpose and priorities. And then we talk about your goals and we make sure those goals are realistic. So I hope that makes sense. It's really about starting not with what do I need to do professionally, but what do I need at this point in my career? And the other thing that I've been talking about more and more and thinking about more and more is a sabbatical is a time where we can also take a step back and think about how can I make my career sustainable? So are there like habits or patterns that I need to change or tweak so that I can be making my highest contribution to my field and to my profession moving forward in my career and not be on this like burn or but like the hamster wheel, that kind of cycle where you're just constantly burned out and pushing through it.
Definitely not another year of work, right? To continue to work, but just without the teaching. But you just do the exact same thing as you do, but just like doing research in a different place, right? Doing research at home. So it makes perfect sense. So it sounds like you went to Fedor, like in France, for 5 months, like from August to December that year. You talk about you came back on Christmas, so it's about 5 months. So how do you see the difference between a sabbatical and a regular summer break? Because we also get a summer break off every year, right? And in our one institution, we teach 2-2, we get a summer break off. And summer break, we are not expected to teach. So 4 months in the summer compared to 5 months for regular semester off during sabbatical. So can we just use the summertime to reset?
Yeah, I would love that. um, I think that's very hard to do pre-tenure, right? And even post-tenure, because most of us, I think this is very hard to explain to people outside of academia that while we are not on contract over the summer, A, there are things we often have to do over the summer, even though we're not getting paid. And B, like we're not getting paid, but we still, you're still getting revise and resubmits, or you're still applying for a grant. But yeah, absolutely. I like to think about the summer, as I've been working on sabbaticals more and more, I have been thinking about the way that the summer is kind of like a mini sabbatical. And so I think it presents itself with a summer has some of the same challenges as a sabbatical and also some of the same opportunities. So the challenges are that I don't know about you, but I always start the summer full of optimism. I'm going to get everything done, right? And I forget that schedules change in the summer, right? My kids have different school routine or not school routines. They're out of school. They're in summer camps, but the rhythms are different. I want to have a different rhythm in the summer because I want to be outside. I want to have spontaneous, day trips or go away for a weekend or go on vacation. Um, and so I often get stuck in this pattern of thinking I'm going to get all the things done over the summer and then feeling a lot of regret at the end of the summer. Time flew by, I didn't do everything. So I think we can apply the principles of sabbatical planning to the summer. And a lot of that, and again, that's about like saying, what do I want from this summer? What do I need from the summer? So for me this summer, I was like, I really like running and I have a hard time maintaining my running schedule during the school year. And so for me this summer, it's like, I just need to get back into that routine. So I need to start my day after the kids go to camp. So this is like at 9 o'clock, I need to start my workout. And that's what I want to prioritize. And then I chose one project, one professional project. I have my sabbatical business too that I kept doing during the summer. But in terms of like scholarly writing, I just focused on one project and I said, you know what, I'm going to lower the expectations for the summer because I know I need to work on my, physical health and well being. And I want to, you know, get some professional work done and continue my business, but I also want to have time for my family and time for fun. So, yes, I think we can treat the summer like a mini sabbatical. And I would say that if you want to, anyone who wants to take the summer completely off, if you just need someone to like cheerlead you on, just get in touch with me and I will like 100% advocate for it. Because I think it's so important that we we don't just push through burnout, right? That we actually give ourselves time. I think we'll do better work if we let ourselves rest and then come back feeling fresh.
Even just the way that you approach like any time off to lower the expectation and focus on essential stuff and looking inward instead of like checking the box for external criteria, I think is incredibly valuable. Um, since we talk about kids, so I do think one thing makes the summer different from a regular semester is kids do go to school during regular semesters. So going somewhere outside of the states or outside of the country like during a regular semester, it means that you have to take your kids, and then they have not only we are going out of the country, but they are also going to school outside of the country. So I'm curious about how realistic when you have family, multiple kids, and a spouse with a full-time job, and how realistic is it to take a sabbatical outside of the country like you?
Yeah, I think it depends. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of logistics. I personally, that's a challenge that I like. I'm very organized. I actually really like planning travel. My husband really likes to travel, and so for us going away during sabbatical, it was kind of like it was important to both of us, and it felt like something we both wanted to prioritize. I That said, I did most of the planning. And I did a recent podcast episode about this with my husband, and he says, like, I didn't know this, but he kind of like intentionally took a back seat because I was a little all over the place. Like, we're going to Costa Rica, we're going to Spain, we're going to France. And so he kind of like rode that wave, and just waited to see where things would land. But, I think like so many things, it's really a question of values and priorities, right? And so we knew for our family that it's something we wanted to make happen. Our kids, I would say, were not super excited about it. I mean, my son, it was like a roller coaster for him when we first told him, and we planned the whole thing before we told our kids. We didn't involve them in the planning process. They were 4 and 9 when we told them that we were going. And my son was really excited. He was 9 going into he was in 4th grade when we were in France. He was initially very excited, and then he was very, very upset. He just bawled for like an hour, because he was sad. He was going to miss his friends. He wasn't going to be able to do his normal activities at school. Um, so it wasn't always easy. That For my husband, it was definitely a choice. Like, he had the flexibility at that point to go away, but it might not have been the most strategic career move for him. So, these are things we don't know. And it was a decision we made and a risk we decided to take. And also, financially, it can be challenging. And we also decided that we were willing to, um, like, dip into our savings a little bit if we had to for this, or recognize that it would be a semester abroad that we were spending more than we normally would. And we were in a situation where we felt comfortable doing that. So, yeah, so that's just all that even, that's not even to say, mention all of the logistics, it took a while, and like getting kids enrolled in school, in another place can be challenging.
It is definitely challenging, but when you interview your son and your daughter, it seems like it's really unforgettable experience for them, and your husband is very supportive. And then, so I do think it is very meaningful when people have the opportunity. But I'm just thinking about like since you said it's a niche market, so I'm just thinking about how many people are actually thinking about like going out of the country and take a way sabbatical. So since we're talking about business idea, and I'm just gonna play devil's advocate one more time. So can people do this kind of work to plan a sabbatical all by themselves? Like why do they need a coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing, I will answer that in a minute. I just want to say that one thing that surprised me. So you said, can everyone, or you asked, can that many people really plan a sabbatical away? The most surprising thing about my business is that most of the people I help, most of my clients are not going away for their sabbaticals. So most of my clients, I thought that I would be helping people plan sabbaticals to far-flung places, and I am in some cases, but actually I think most people seek me out because they wanted to go away, but they can't for some reason, or they're just struggling with, you know, I'm on sabbatical, so I'm not teaching, I'm not doing service, but I'm still in my same location. Like for me, it's my basement. How do I make a year in my basement feel different from a normal year? How do I make it feel like a sabbatical? So I just wanted to put that out there, that that's been really interesting to me. And actually, I love working with people who are not going away, because it feels like a different kind of challenge to think about, how do you make the sabbatical really feel different from your normal daily routines? Could people do it on their own? I mean, yeah, like I don't want to undercut myself, but I do think it's possible. I tell people, what I'm doing is not, you can probably find things online, right? And do it yourself. I think what I offer, that, and the reason people choose to work with me, and not everyone does, but for people who do choose to work with me, it's having a thought partner, having someone to ask you questions or bring things up that you hadn't thought about before. And also just having a clear roadmap. So if you sign up to work with me, you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? So you don't have to be Googling things. You don't have to be wondering, am I doing this right? I have a curriculum. I mean, I'm a teacher by training, and so I'm very good. And obviously, we all have lots of experience planning a syllabus. So when I planned this program, I essentially created a syllabus, and I thought, okay, where do I want my clients to be by the end of this program? And then I created a plan to help bring them there. And so when you sign up for this, I have an online platform that has short video lessons and activities. And so I provide the structure, the framework, and the accountability. And, my clients have to do work too. You have to show up and think about your sabbatical and engage with the materials. But I think the value that I provide is, a person who can see the sabbatical from a different perspective, has learned about a lot of, I have my own experience, but I've now worked with 30 academics planning their sabbaticals. So I have kind of a wider perspective and example of things people have done. And then I'm really organized and good at good at helping move people along, so that even if you're feeling overwhelmed with all the other things you have to do, I help you carve out that space to really spend some time for yourself thinking about your sabbatical. And I think that's going to be really beneficial ultimately to your career if you go into it with thought and intention.
It sounds actually exactly like a course that we teach. Like for the university, we have a value, we hope to transform people, but then we create a framework, a structure, and then weekly schedule. We assign some readings and we meet with them through discussion. And then we assign some homework, and then we hope to change people's mind, and then we conclude, and people may change their behavior. So it's like exactly organized like a syllabus and a class, like as you talk about. So let's move on. Now you have the content and you have the idea and you identify the needs and the niche market. So how did you turn this idea into business? How did you implement it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, sometime around spring 2024, so I started thinking about this idea probably almost as soon as I got to Bordeaux, like maybe September 2023. I said to my husband, what if I helped people plan their sabbaticals? And we're kind of like, that's interesting. So I started keeping a journal just with ideas, like what would this curriculum look like? And then in the spring 2024, when I was still on sabbatical, I kind of got brave enough to think about, okay, what if I did this? What if I made a website? And to be honest, like I had no idea. My initial plan was make a website and then I'm going to magically get clients. And luckily, I reached out to someone who specifically makes websites for coaches and consultants. And so I had heard him speak on another podcast, and I reached out and about creating a website. And he and I were talking, and he said, you know what, your niche is really interesting. I've never met someone a sabbatical coach before. Do you want to be part of a program that I'm piloting where I help people start their business and get their first paying client? The program was called First Paying Client. So it was essentially a boot camp. And so I was like, yes, because I have no idea. I have no plan. So really that helped me what we did in that boot camp, I mean, it was very intensive. I started the boot camp, and within 21 days, I had my first client, or 21 days later, I had my first client. So he helped us figure out our signature framework. So it's that curriculum that I use that I've now tweaked over the year plus that I've been doing this, but come up with that, figure out your initial price that you're going to offer, which is lower than what I charge now. So I didn't start out doing it for free, but I charged a very low price to my first clients so that I could try, people who are willing to be my guinea pigs and try it out and give me feedback and help me figure out, what was working and what needed to be transformed. So I built the program, and then, okay, so then the next thing, how I actually got the clients was he encouraged us to do what he called research calls. So basically, I reached out to like 50 people in my network. And the nice thing about providing a service to academics is that my clients are my network, right? So I reached out to a lot of friends and said, hey, I know you had a sabbatical recently. Would you be willing to talk to me about any challenges you had planning it? So the idea was to just learn more about the challenges people face when planning a sabbatical and the kinds of things that would have been helpful to them. And some people I knew had already taken sabbaticals. Some people I didn't know if they had had a sabbatical, or I thought maybe they had a sabbatical coming up. And so my first clients actually came out of those research calls where I would happen upon a person who was planning a sabbatical, and they were like, these are the challenges that I'm facing. And I was like, oh, I'm actually creating this program, and here's what I'm planning on doing. Would you be interested in trying it out? And so some people I spoke to were like, yeah, that sounds amazing. That's exactly what I would need. And I was sitting here shocked, like I couldn't believe that that anyone would want to pay me for this. But yeah, so that's how I got started. And I actually built the whole thing. I didn't actually make my website and launch my website until I had gotten a few clients and I was really clear on the service I was providing. And I think that made a lot of sense because it allowed me to just really understand what I was doing and then make the website that reflected that, so that hopefully when you go to my website, it's very clear what I do and the process that I use.
It is very, very clear what you do, and it is a fantastic website. I have to say, like the most valuable about the website are the podcasts. And
Yeah.
however, I mean, I don't really pay for the podcast. I just listen to all of them, so I feel bad because I don't really contribute to your business. So I'm curious about how many research calls you make, and then until you get you got your first client.
Like how much should I invest in the
How many
business?
research calls? Like you
Oh, how
said,
many research calls? Yeah.
mm,
Oh, until I got my first client. I mean, it might have been like 10 to 15, honestly. And then I kept doing them as I was getting clients, but it wasn't that many. I mean, my first client, and I'm very grateful to her, it was someone that I knew not very well, but I knew through she's in the same field as me, but in a different institution. And so those were kind of warm contacts, right? So we can think of people who may become clients. There are people who are cold who just click on my website and they're like, oh, this seems interesting. Let me book a consultation. Some people sometimes will sign up for my program, but I find that people are more likely to enroll in my program if like if they've been listening to my podcast, because you and I were talking before and you said, oh, I feel like I know you. And that's the reason I do the podcast, is to share information, because I do think this information should be out there and available. And I want people you know, who maybe then decide that they might listen to the podcast and say, oh, I really could use support from Bethany. I would love to work with her. But I'm also just as happy for people to use the information, even if they don't work for me, or work with me, because I just want people to take better sabbaticals, right? But if people come to me, like if they know me or we have some sort of connection, I do think they're more likely to become a client because, there's already some trust there.
for sure. Um, so you mentioned that you have been doing this for over a year. So what are the feedbacks that you have been getting from the clients? Especially you said the first one is a guinea pig. So as a sabbatical coach, this is apparently probably one of the first business you actually have created. And so what are the feedback that you have been getting from clients so far?
Yeah, the feedback has been really positive. I mean, I've been very appreciative. It's kind of like getting feedback from students. Sometimes you get feedback that's not really helpful in terms of giving you a clear direction, but because the people I work with are so smart and thoughtful, they've been able to let me know what worked really well. Like what I really like to hear are things like, oh, when they say something in a session like doing this worksheet or this activity helped me realize this thing that I hadn't thought about. So it might not be direct feedback, but when I can see that there was a transformation or that a prompt that I gave them unlocked something for them, that's really helpful. Um, on the other hand, feedback that I've gotten or just things that I've noticed about the way the program worked over time have helped me make changes to it. So there was this one module that I used to have in the program, and we, with like 3 or 4 clients, we got to that module, and it was like I think we both were kind of like, okay, what are we doing? Why do we have a whole session on this? Like this doesn't really feel like it needs to stand alone. We're not having a great conversation about it. So I was like, okay, this is helpful. And with some clients, I was like, was that session helpful, or do you think I could have put that content in the week before? And so I've been able to take feedback, like either direct feedback, where sometimes people will say, I wasn't really, or they'll say, I was kind of confused by this. So I wasn't really sure what to do. And then I'm like, okay, I need to change the way I talk about that, the way I introduce it. So I've definitely had, even though it's only been a year or like almost a year and a half now, I've had multiple iterations of the program. And I'm sure I will continue to have more iterations because things, as I like am noticing how it flows and where the insights are coming and where things, if things feel like they're stalling, I never want clients to feel like, oh, I have to meet with Bethany again and like this is going to be such a waste of my time because we're all busy, and so I want everything we do to be really meaningful and high impact. So
So it kind of sounds like how we revise our classes based on student evaluation. So let's talk about the clients or the students. So you mentioned that you work with about 30 of them so far for over a year. So do you have any ideas about who they are? For example, like what kind of institutions they're from, or what general disciplines that they're from? Yeah, just who are they?
yeah, and that's a great question. And this is actually one of the most exciting things to me. And I think why part of why I love this so much is I've worked with people from all over the country, from lots of different types of institutions and many different disciplines. So there's no sort of, well, the only thing that most of them have in common is so far all of my clients have been women, um, and many of them have kids. So I think that, this is not the specific, I'm very open to working. I do have clients who don't have kids. I'm open to male clients, but I think, again, the things that I talk about or the challenges that I tend to talk about and address might resonate more with women and particularly moms. Um, but I've also been surprised, like, I've had a few clients who've been close to retirement. I thought only kind of younger faculty, like more junior faculty, would want to work with me. So I've had people planning pre-tenure sabbaticals, post-tenure sabbaticals, and people who are on their like second, third, or fourth sabbatical. I've had folks at R1 institutions, R2, small liberal arts colleges. I've worked with people in my field in education, but also psychology, um, geography, and history, lots of different humanities and social sciences departments. So lots of different people. And so I've learned a lot about universities too, and even just like how sabbaticals work at different universities.
It's fascinating to think about all your clients so far, all 30 of them are all women, and most of them have kids. So, do you have any strategies or ideas to expand your business? For example, like to attract male clients?
I mean, I've had several reach out to me and do have consultations, and um, they haven't enrolled. And so, I not everyone, even women and moms, not everyone does enroll. So I think right now, I'm I can't take on more clients than I currently have, so I'm not actually looking to expand. I think I'm just, my approach is to put the information out there and see who it resonates with. I do think, and this is like my informal analysis, but I feel like there are particular gendered challenges to sabbatical, right? Where um, and it may not necessarily be just women who experience this or moms, but where people who are thinking about caregiving responsibilities and the work and the personal life. I think those are the clients that I attract who are trying to figure out like, how can I be present with my kids and not just give them what's left over at the end of the day, but how can I also take some time for my kids and how can I also work on, the things that got me into this job in the first place. And so I don't know, maybe there's a gendered dimension to it that it tends to be women who are thinking more about these things potentially.
Probably also people who are embedded in a net of relations and usually will need, as you said, the thought partner to think about like what to prioritize next. So let's turn to the financial aspect of the program. So for my understanding, the program provide a structure and then they get newsletter from you. They also get the check-in call from you every week and then to hold accountability. So how much does the program cost?
Yeah, so my programs, I have a couple iterations. They cost about $1,500 to $2,000. And that includes all of the curriculum materials and one-on-one coaching sessions. I have a few clients right now who I have really customized packages for them because they had unique situations. So, I'm always open to conversations about, creating a structure that works for my clients.
So this $1,500 to $2,000 cover the whole sabbatical or time before and after? What is the time frame for it?
Yeah, so this is the pre-sabbatical work that we're doing. And then folks who want to add on like maintenance sessions or on sabbatical support sessions, I offer additional packages for that. But this is the planning process. And that's evolved over time. I used to offer sort of support during sabbatical, but then I noticed that people weren't always using that. And so it felt like some people just want to plan their sabbatical, go on sabbatical and be like, Bethany, don't bother me. And so, so that's fine. But I do check in with my clients by email. So I don't leave them entirely on their own. At the end of the final week of the program is setting up sabbatical systems. So I have my clients set up for over the course of their sabbatical to mark on their calendar 3 times that they're going to check in with themselves to just see how sabbatical is going, revisit the goals that we talked about, and make sure they're still on track. And then I also reach out by email 3 times over the sabbatical with some prompts for reflection and ideas for course correction. So there's ongoing support, just not in those one-on-one sessions necessarily.
So let's talk about your investment to this business. So how much you have been invested so far? For example, the first paid client, the camp that you attended, or the maintenance of the website, or even started the website. So let's talk about
Mhm.
the like cost of your investment like in this business so far.
Yeah. So I think in the first year, and the startup costs were the highest in the first year because I paid um, about $4,000 for my website. I didn't actually have to pay for the boot camp because it was like a beta. So that was a that was a really good deal. I got my website and that boot camp for $4,000, which I think I was very lucky. So I'm not sure that that's really realistic for others. And then I pay for a lot of subscriptions. I do pay for my domain name and then hosting. So that's probably a couple $100 a year. I have a Zoom subscription, right? Because I bought myself a new computer that I only use, right? I don't want to use my university computer and Zoom subscription for my business. And then other subscriptions like Calendly, Google Workspace, so that I have my email address, Bethany@BethanyWilinski.com, right? Not my personal Gmail address. Um, I also pay for a recording studio service that I use to record my podcasts. So I think my initial startup costs were probably about $10,000 in the first year. So not insignificant. But then some of those initial investments, like I'm not buying a new computer every year, I'm not paying for a new website every year. So now my ongoing costs will be lower. Oh, and I also pay probably my biggest yearly investment is the platform where I have my online modules, right? So I pay for um, not the least expensive sort of, like Canva, or Canvas, like learning management system type of platform. But it's one that I like, that I feel like looks very professional, and that I feel good about sending my clients to. And that's where all my videos and worksheets live. And so when you enroll in my program, you get access to a course essentially on that online platform.
And how much does that platform, the professional platform, cost?
That's about $2,000 a year.
And that's a one-time fee, or you have to continue to pay 2,000 every year?
It's a subscription. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Should
again, there are less expensive options, and so I don't want anyone to feel intimidated. The way I started out actually with my first clients is my delivery mechanism was I created a Google Drive folder, and I would say like, okay, here's your Google Drive folder, and each week I'm going to put in the materials that you need for the course. So I think there are ways you can do it without having one of these um, platforms, because and then you just copy, right? If I have multiple clients, I don't have to like reinvent the wheel. I would record all the videos and create all the worksheets, and then I would just upload it into your Google Drive folder. And then every week I send you an email that says, hi, Ann, like, welcome to week 2. Here's what you're going to be doing. Go into your Google Drive folder. You'll find the video and the worksheets. So you could certainly do it that way. I think very early on, once I had like 4 clients, I realized that it was going to be much easier for me to just have everything live on one platform and not do things like I had to automate some things.
So do you think the business is going okay so far? Like you got all your initial investment back and still making profit?
Yes, I think in the first year I did not make profit, and my accountant was trying to very much make sure that I didn't make a profit. Like what did you spend on? I mean, the things they ask you, like, what did you spend on lunches while you were working? And I think for this kind of side business, I thought, well, I know he asked me, what did you spend on gas? And I said, well, I send my clients a welcome gift, and I go to the post office, but the post office is a quarter mile away from me. So I spent $10 on gas in the whole year, like that. It was not a significant business invest or expense, but they try to deduct as much as they can. So yeah, my expenses are less this year, and really what it's doing for our family financially is, my husband started a biotech company. So he was in a postdoc and decided not to take an academic job, and start a business instead. So it's giving us the breathing room to have him do something new and not have an income right now. I mean, we're hoping he'll have an income soon, but right now he doesn't. So it gives us a little bit more, yeah, a little bit of a financial cushion, I would say. But also, to be honest, I mean, if you're starting a side business, yes, you want to make money. Like, this is the goal. And I'm not ashamed to say that it's about making money, but it also creates like this nice outlet for me that it really kind of invigorates me, because I get to connect with people in different ways, use my creativity in different ways. And so I actually think it there's a nice synergy between my business and my job. So like, yes, it helps me financially, but I think it also helps me be a better colleague and a better mentor. And I bring the things that I learn from my business into my academic job as well.
Well, of course, shamelessly, we want to make money. I mean, and I hope that you can make more. But making money, like for your business so far, as I understand, it also takes a lot of time because you have to do maintenance for the platform, you have to create contents, and also you have to meet with the clients. And then, so how much time does it take up from your job and your life so far for the side business?
Yeah, so it really depends. Like, it was very time intensive when I started the business. Like I said, it was, I was in this boot camp for 3 weeks. That was extremely intense. And then the way I did it, the other thing people might be interested to know is that I had the outline, so like the syllabus for the program, but I didn't create all the content before I started working with my first client. So I had my first clients signed up, and then I created everything like if I was just a week ahead of them, basically. So, kind of the way we do, most of us do with our teaching, you don't create everything over the summer that you're going to need for the fall. You do it incrementally. So, just something else for people who might be thinking about this is you don't have to have everything set up before you get started. You just need a solid plan, and you need to like be acting in integrity. Like, I knew that I was promising something I could deliver. And so that was labor intensive. I would say the first year, um, I probably took on, like, there was a time in the fall where I probably took on too many clients and I felt a little overwhelmed. But I think now I probably spend like 5 to 10 hours on my business every week. So sometimes less. I have a lot of things like my courses, the modules that I send out to clients are all completed. So, I might be tweaking things here and there. I do a lot of automating emails and scheduling emails. I do post on social media, but I just try to do like Facebook and LinkedIn 3 days a week, and I try to batch those. So I will sit down and create posts for like the next 2 weeks, and I schedule those. I have a Canva account, and so I can schedule those in Canva. Um, so a lot of it, and like for the podcast, I had been doing an episode every week last year, which is a lot to keep up with. So this year I'm doing every other week, and I actually recorded a lot of them this spring, after the semester ended. So I'm able to not spend a lot of time on that. So, yeah, so that's kind of, it's busy, but it's a good busy. And then I also know like if I'm feeling like it's too much, I can just scale back. Like, I didn't post as much on social media the past couple weeks cuz it's September, and like academic life is really hectic in September as everything's getting started up.
So it sounds like it's about 5 to 10 hours every week on top of teaching a two low and two children, and then also a husband works full time, like at
Yeah.
least one. It sounds quite busy to me, but as long as it's meaningful, so I guess it energizes you for something that meaningful that you work on. So, do you have any plans in the future? Perhaps you can turn this into something that can bring you passive income. You don't have to put in a lot of like very labor intense work, and then but it will continue to make money for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think in my first year, I went back and forth a lot in my head about how I wanted the business to be. I do have a couple of things on that are available that are more passive. Like, I have what is it called? The summer reset, like a small program to plan your summer, that people can just go on my website and buy. I have a family sabbatical, like online asynchronous program for that's really about like planning the logistics of taking your family away for sabbaticals. So, like, how do you pick a destination? How do you get an apartment? How do you get like think about visas? How do you think about schools for the kids? So I have a couple things like that. And I know, like, in the ether, there's a lot. Like, if you start thinking about a side hustle or side business, it can be very alluring to think that you just put up a website and people will start buying something from you. But, and I hate to like shatter anyone's dreams, but I think it's actually very hard unless you already have an audience, because you need to be constantly reminding people that your stuff is there. And I think and so you do have to do this. I think you need a critical amount of content for Google to find you. So what's kind of thrilling to me right now is most of my clients are people I never knew. Like I have no connection to them. And so they found me on the internet or through a podcast I was on. But I think for people to start finding you on the internet, you have to have like a lot out there. And I think for me, like the podcast and the blog helps with that. Um, the other thing though that I realized is that I think I like the one-on-one aspect of it. It is more time intensive, but I think I like the connection and knowing that what I am putting out into the world is making a difference for people. And when you have things that where you're not interacting with people, then I don't know if it's helping them. So I think for right now, it's going to be the one-on-one. And, I just have to be very mindful of how many clients I take on and not overdoing it and just continuing to make sure that, like, taking my own temperature and saying, like, is this still working? Am I doing this because I really want to be doing it? Or am I doing it because I feel like I have to do it for some reason? But so far, I'm still really excited every time a client enrolls, and I enjoy getting to know people. And I'll say one more thing that I was working with one of my clients the other day about her. She really wanted to just get a better morning routine in place. Like this was an area of struggle. Just like, how do I kind of get out of bed and like start working and not get distracted by email and social media? And so we talked about some different strategies and she came up with a plan. And then the next day, she sent me a picture of her workspace and said, like, I'm doing it. And I was like, yes, this is great. Like, so for me, knowing that the work I'm doing is actually like making a difference is really important. And so that's why I like the one-to-one connection.
Your work is actually changing people, so I think that is important. But if no one else have written it before about sabbatical, and I guess your knowledge and your experience and your business could probably become a very interesting book, and then you can publish it. You can publish an old app first, and then you can write a book later. And I will be really excited to read it. So I've learned so much from you about your sabbatical experience and how do you come up with an idea and how do you turn the idea into the business, and lots of very important and very interesting aspects about specific aspects about this business. So let's circle back to the theme of our season. So reflecting on your experience, and what advice would you give to colleagues who are also interested in starting their side hustles, their own business, by utilizing some of their scholarly skills?
Yeah, I think, you know, thinking about the skills you have, it can be hard. I didn't think as much about the skills I already have. I guess maybe a starting point is like, what are you excited about? What outside of academia or related to academia do you feel like you could talk about a lot? And as you've probably guessed, I can talk about sabbaticals for a long time. Like, I really just love talking about it. And where do you see that there's a need? But then what I didn't realize when I started my business was that I'm a qualitative researcher, I'm an ethnographer. So essentially, I am trained to ask questions and listen carefully to the responses and then find patterns in the data. And this is really what my coaching is, right? I ask you, like, so tell me about your sabbatical. What challenges are you encountering as you plan it? And I listen to you, and then we take it from there. So there might be skills that you have that you just haven't thought about as like transferable. I guess I never thought about my skills as an ethnographic interviewer as transferable to other contexts. So think about what you're interested in, what skills you have, and then I guess, you know, I don't know how, like, I think doing some market research and figuring out, like, is what I potentially want to offer something that people um really really want to pay for. You never know. I honestly didn't know if anyone would pay me to help them plan their sabbatical, but it turns out they do. Um and then I feel like the other thing I was thinking about as I was kind of preparing in my head for this podcast interview, I was just thinking that there is a lot of noise out there about how easy it is to start a business and how quickly you'll make six figures. Everyone loves saying six figures. And that really bothers me because six figures could be $100,000 or it could be $900,000, and that's a big difference. But B, what I've realized is there is no real get rich quick scheme, right? I mean, of course, there are these unicorns and people who do it, but I think if you decide to go into building a business, just realize you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn about marketing, you're going to learn about like platforms and customer relation management and whatever. Um, and it's going to be probably a lot of work, and you probably won't earn as much money as you think you're going to earn. And so just realize that like slow and steady is probably how you'll need to do it. But I think, but for me, that's very rewarding, and I'm happy to be doing it, even though I'm not earning six figures from my business.
And we are all very patient. Otherwise, we will not go to graduate school, write the dissertation, and to go on the tenure process. And all those like take long, very, very long time, just like making the business successful. So, what else would you like us to know about you and your work before we end this conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing to kind of add on to advice, I guess, for scholars. So one thing I think about with this business is I think about what I might do like when I retire. And so one way, which feels like a long way off, but building a side business can be not just about some giving yourself more financial security, but it could be about looking into the future. As we all live longer, I don't think I'm going to be someone who retires and then just, sits around eating bonbons. And so this business, if I keep going with it, feels like something I could do for a long time, and that could be very fulfilling. I always joke with my husband that like when you make your millions, I'm going to retire and not work, but I don't actually think I'm a person I like to have challenges. So, you can think about it too as like a long-term strategy. It doesn't have to be your exit out of academia. It can just be something that brings you a different type of fulfillment than your 9 to 5 job. Well, academic jobs are not 9 to 5, but then your academic job. And then the other thing is, I think if you have an opportunity to take a sabbatical, take it. Take it as soon as you can. I think sometimes, like right now, it feels like the world is on fire and people are like, how could I take a sabbatical? The sooner you take your first sabbatical, the sooner you'll be able to earn your second sabbatical. And if you're planning it, take some time to think about what you need. And don't just worry about what your institution needs. Your sabbatical is about you, about your long-term well-being, and about creating a sustainable career. So always start with you and what you need, and then let the professional goals follow that.
Thank you so much for sharing, Bethany. I learned so much from you and very excited about all the new plans. Wish you all the best with the future projects and clients. And hope your next sabbatical is coming around very soon so you can take your family to go to Bador again and maybe think about a retirement. Great to talk to you. Thank you so much, Bethany.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed being on the podcast today.
Now we have heard about Bethany's story of how she turned her personal experience into a unique solution to a problem that she identified. Then she turned this solution into a coaching business, and what starting a side business is like in academia, with some specific costs and time investment. I hope this episode provides you a perspective to think what scholars can use their academic skills to do. With the knowledge, the vision, the network, and the patience and persistence we have been trained for so many years. So, what side business would you like to start? And by the way, sabbatical is probably the best time to think about those questions. For graduate students, I hope you see other possibilities to imagine a scholarly career and think outside of the box. If you're interested in rethinking relationship between work and life, please check out Bethany Wilinski and her work. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.
If you enjoyed this episode of Tenure, a Game Manual, make sure to check out our other episodes. Or if you just can't get enough of us, follow us on social media at Tenure, a Game Manual. This episode was produced by Sebastian Bancesco. Our executive producer and host is Dr. An Lee, and today's guest was Dr. Bethany Wilinski. Sebastian Bancesco is also our editor, and we're generously sponsored by the Provost Teaching Fellow Program and the UT Dallas' Center for Teaching and Learning. Thanks for listening. We've now reached our special segment where this season we ask academic professionals a question. Make sure to stick around at the end of each episode to hear the next one. Today we've asked Dr. Junya Zhou, an economics professor at UT Dallas, what's one piece of advice you would give to anybody working in academia?
If I were to share just one piece of advice, and this is also something I wish I could do better myself, it would be this: take the initiative and build a new supporting network. So the transition from being a PhD student or postdoc to becoming a faculty is more than just a change in title. Suddenly, we're no longer someone else's students or junior collaborators. And part of this transition is intellectual. Like now we need to learn to trust our own judgment and having the courage to say no without feeling guilty to obligations that don't serve our priorities. And also becoming comfortable leading projects rather than waiting for our advisors to guide us, and building our own research identity. And the other part is social, realizing that the support system we had at students, advisors, cohorts, and built-in mentorship will naturally fade. And it doesn't feel easy in the beginning, but that's okay. The key is to proactively build a new network, talking to peers who are at a similar career stage, finding collaborators who share similar research interests, both in and outside your department, and also mentors who share valuable insights and advice. I feel this transition is challenging and takes time, but the sooner we stop trying to fit in and start building something of our own with the right people around us, the more fulfilling and sustainable our academic careers will become.